very quick ceremony. I will, on and ending it on coaching, I will give it to Mr. Daniel Vaz, who is probably one of India's most qualified and experienced coaches. Uh, the material that has been circulated gives a bit of his background, but let me tell you that he is an IITian first, and he's a CEO of a division of a very large public limited company. He has a very very busy, day job. Heads multiple divisions of a company and multiple facilities, etc. Very busy lifestyle, as you can understand, but still, he coaches a lot of athletes in the country. Coaching, he does this because he's passionate about it. Nobody can, tell somebody to coach if, he's not passionate about it. And I've seen the kind of passion that Dan has, and he brings to coaching, and all the self-study that he has done from his own running and from his own, academic studies, that is, so willingly coming and sharing. This is probably going to be a very good talk because it tells you how to do your best, personal best for tomorrow. Over to Dan.
Thank you, Venkat. Venkat has been giving me a lot of tension over the last couple of days. Ever since he conceptualized this running summit, he's called me up day before yesterday saying, Dan, no, your presentation should enable the runner to run very well the next day. And I've been thinking about, you're here the previous evening, tomorrow morning is the race, and short of recommending a small puja and a havan, what could I possibly tell you? So anyway, jokes aside, what I'm going to do is, we have established runners over here, and you probably know running, racing, and things like that. But I intend to share with you conceptually a technical aspect of what you should not be doing in racing. Okay, one part of it is for the full marathon, and the other part is for the half marathon. So I intend to share that, and let me also tell you about the physiological aspects of running in the heat, which is what you're going to do in the later half of the race for the full marathon. So, okay, the first slide is general stuff, night before, which Kinita spoke about. Race morning, making sure that you don't elevate your race anxiety by setting jarring alarms and things like that. You wake up and do race visualization. Okay, that's what you do even this evening before you go to bed. It's very important for you to go over the course of the entire race mentally. Understand what your body went through physiologically when you were training for your long runs, especially, and let yourself understand what you would do when you start out, let's say from Bandra, going over the ceiling. You know that there is a slight incline there. That's going to test your heart rate a little bit. And then when you hit Pedder Road, what exactly you're going to do at that so-called heartbreak hill. Visualize the entire course tonight and tomorrow morning. That's very important for you because auto-suggestion, as we call it, helps you in your racing. It internalizes a lot of the stuff that you're going to do in racing. So I'm not going to go through this 10 minutes before the start, except for the fact that you need to go to the washroom probably, okay? And during the race, after the race. Okay, so we are going to talk about your race execution and what to do or what not to do in that race execution. So I'll talk first about the long run and the marathon pace that you've practiced. Make sure tomorrow that if you have set a goal pace for yourself, a goal finishing time, you should have practiced it, okay, in your training. If it's your marathon pace, let's say it's 6 minutes per kilometer, you should have done a bulk of your long runs with at least 80% of that long run at that pace. If you haven't done it at that pace, you're actually shooting in the dark when you go tomorrow to run your race. And if it's going to be the full marathon, you're going to be in for a very big surprise if you don't pace yourself properly. And I'll explain that to you in more detail because that's really what is the meat of the subject today, which you can take home out of this summit. Okay? We're going to talk about rating of perceived exertion, how your rating of perceived exertion changes as you start the race and going towards the finish, and what it means to you the way you race, how you should use that as an indicator of what exactly you're doing in the race. Okay? So we may come back to the slide, but let me move on. Yeah? Physiological response to exercise in the heat. This is something that you must understand. There are two aspects which happen here. The first one is that as soon as you see elevated temperature in your run or in the race, there is one physiological change that's going to take place. The blood flow will be directed to your skin automatically because the surface of the skin has to cool. Now you know that there is a limited supply of blood in your body. If that blood flow is diverted to the skin, less blood flow is available for your legs. Okay? So automatically, if less blood flow is available for your legs, your pace is going to drop. So that's the first thing you must know. Now, let's say you come from the standpoint that you decided on a predetermined pace. You wanted to go at 6 minutes per kilometer, but the sun came up. If you were to force that pace on yourself, it means that you're going to work at an elevated heart rate, which is not exactly the heart rate that you want to start out the race with. So that's what I mean by being a little bit aware about what you want to do the next day. If the temperature goes up, you must be aware that your pace will go down because you want to maintain the same effort level, the same heart rate. Okay? The second aspect that's going to happen to, let's say, the full marathon in the second half of the race is that you are going to get partially dehydrated if you haven't been having water at the, let's say, correct intervals and in the correct quantity. So just to let you know what are the changes that take place. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. If the temperature goes up, your sweat rate goes up. If the sweat rate goes up, your plasma volume falls down. Okay? Your blood level, the volume of your blood level goes down because naturally the water is disappearing. Now, a 1% reduction in weight will increase the temperature of your core by 0.21 degrees centigrade. This is important for you to note because if your core temperature rises, you are not going to be able to sustain a pace in the marathon. Okay? So, like we spoke, a 2% drop in weight is sustainable because you really don't feel the effects of dehydration. But the moment you come to 3% weight reduction, your endurance is going to go down by 10%. And you must be aware that you are probably going to finish the race in much more time than you expected to if you allow this 3% dehydration to affect you, which means basically that you're sweating such a lot, but you're not taking in enough water at the water stations. Okay? The other aspect about a 1% drop in your body weight because of dehydration is that you must note this. 6 beats per minute, your heart rate is likely to go up. Okay? So if you are using a heart rate monitor, and let's say your target heart rate was 150 beats per minute. There are a lot of people who work on target heart rates, 150 beats per minute. If you were to try to sustain your original pace with this 1% drop, you would see 156 beats per minute, which means that you actually have to drop your pace, and therefore you would increase the time of your finishing time of your race. Okay? Sleep deprivation. If you haven't slept well last night, because tonight you're not going to sleep well, race anxiety and you wake up at 3 in the morning, you're not going to really sleep well. But if you haven't slept well last night and you don't feel well rested today, you can be sure that your finishing time is going to surprise you. You're going to take a lot more time to finish the race because research shows that 27% of the time to exertion is really, you're short of it. The last aspect, which is actually the most important aspect, is that cramps. Okay? When you're dehydrated, you know that your electrolyte levels are going to drop. If that happens, you are likely to get cramps. So make sure that you stop at the correct intervals in water stations. The good guideline is 200 ml of water every 20 minutes. Okay? 200. Okay? So 200 ml of water every 20 minutes, which means that you average about 600 ml per hour. Now, that's on the lower side for a person who is a heavy sweater. So if you really sweat a lot, then you need to increase that intake, especially if you're doing the full marathon. Because in the half marathon, you can arrive at the finish line 2% dehydrated and you're still fine. But in the full marathon, if you're running for 4, 5, 6 hours, you are likely to arrive dehydrated if you really sweat a lot more. Okay? What are your strategies for racing in the heat? You must make sure you have adequate hydration. Water preferably should be cooler water, okay? It brings down your core temperature. You should be able to either put water on your head. If you do that, of course, one of the good things to do is to lean forward so that it doesn't get into your shoes, or you use a sponge. We all know that clothing, make sure that just because it's cold in the morning, you don't overdress for it, okay? One of the things that happens with racing in the heat is your carbohydrate depletion. You are likely to lose your stored carbohydrate a lot faster if you're running in the heat. And we'll see what effect that has on your finishing times. Okay? Sleep is also, as I said, sleep deprivation is going to cause you problems. You need to use your Garmin or your heart rate monitor to give you the correct alerts when racing in the heat. You have to know that you're going to do it at 150 beats per minute, or if you have a Garmin, you have set your pace for 6 minutes per kilometer or whatever, right? We're going to talk about this. Basically, this is the envelope which I want to inform you about. If you're running the full marathon, okay, there is a concept called VO2 max. We are not going to get into the technical aspects of what is VO2 max, but VO2 max is basically your effort level, okay? VO2 max is the maximum effort you as a runner are capable of, okay? So we are going to use that basically as a layman's concept to understand the marathon is of fat and 68% of carbohydrates. So you're consuming more carbohydrate than you would have if you were running at the correct pace. So let's see what exactly happens. Yeah. Yeah, the Excel sheet is there. You can click on that. Okay. Okay. What we've done here is that this is a complex equation, but we've put it in an Excel sheet. It basically correlates the effort level, here you can see 75% effort level, with the power output that you're capable of as a runner. Why am I telling you all this is because you'll see in very simplistic terms what happens. 75% of your effort level, okay, 40% was the fat percentage and 60% was the carbohydrate percentage usage, okay. A recreational runner will normally have about 380 grams of glycogen, which is the carbohydrate that you're capable of storing in your body as a recreational runner. As compared to this, a Kenyan or an Ethiopian stores 700 grams, okay. So your capacity as a recreational runner is going to be 380 grams. This 380 grams will be exactly consumed if you sustain this effort level of 75%. And you would use 60% carbohydrate and 40% fat for your run. And you would finish it in 284 minutes. Okay? Now, if I were to change these figures, right, from 75%, if I was to go to, no, the Excel sheet. I'll do it, just move. If I were to change this figure to 80%, okay, and 32% fat, naturally 68% would be the carbohydrate level. Your carbohydrate consumption would have gone up to 430, but you don't have 430 glycogen, right? So what would happen? You would, instead of finishing 42 kilometers, you would have had to utilize it at 37 kilometers. At 37 kilometers, you would have consumed your 380 grams. So does it mean that you're going to stop running at 37 kilometers? No. At 37 kilometer mark, you will be hit by what is called as the wall. Okay? You suddenly find that you've depleted your carbohydrate, your glycogen, and your pace will drop substantially because now you're forced to consume fat. The moment you metabolize fat, your pace has to drop. So from 37 kilometer mark to 42 kilometer mark, it's going to be a huge struggle for you. Okay? So what happens? Your effort level, instead of 80%, will now drop to 50%. So let's see what happens at 50%. If you were to do that at, you would be forced to do that at 50%, this would get reversed. You would burn 68% fat and 32% carbohydrate, okay? And this would have to be, 5.2. 37 kilometers plus 5 kilometers to complete the marathon is, you would have to use 25 grams. Now you can come out and ask me, where did this 25 grams come from? We already exhausted 380 grams, right? But your body has a limited supply of glycogen stored in the liver. You have about 100 grams available in the liver. The body holds on to it, carefully, because that's the only supply available to the brain. Okay? The liver can convert this into glucose very easily, and glucose is the only thing that the brain can use. So out of that limited supply of 100 grams, 25 grams you would consume in order to struggle and reach the finish line, which means that you're really going to be in a severe state of fatigue, because now you are depleting the supply to the brain, and the body is saying the brain is going to shut down. So you really arrive at the finish line in a hammered state. So the moral of the story is that you must judge your pace properly in the marathon. Make sure that you don't get carried away. Make sure that people don't tell you, you can do this, go out faster than this, I'm sure you can finish it. So that's what I want to let you know from this technical basis, that it's really going to affect you. No, yeah, I'll switch to flight. Okay, so coming to the half marathon, you have to be aware in your race, how do you execute your race? Okay, make sure that you use the first 5 kilometers of the race to break into a sweat, which means that you really control your pace to allow yourself to warm up. That's the way to execute your race, the first 5 kilometers. At the end of 10 kilometers, you should have felt, I am now warmed up and at cruising speed, okay? Which means that you feel fresh at the 10 kilometer mark. At this point, you decide that you can step on the gas pedal, okay? But make sure you take a judgment as to how much you want to make the effort, because you still have 11 kilometers to go. What happens if you really step on the gas pedal too much? This is what I want to show you, that in the full marathon, it was glycogen depletion. In the half marathon, you have to be careful about a concept called lactate turn point. There is a chemical which is released into your bloodstream if you try to pace yourself too fast in the 10 kilometer pace range. Okay? There is a range at which this chemical goes into your bloodstream, and that's clearly the 10 kilometer pace that you would, if you were to run a 10 kilometer race, and at the finish line, you would have a lot of blood lactate in your bloodstream. So what happens is that when you're running a half marathon here, your blood lactate is at a certain level. If you were to increase your pace to the 10K pace because you're tempted, right? What would happen? This is called the lactate turn point. Why is it called the turn point? Because suddenly your lactate shoots up. If your lactate shoots up, you have a burn in your calves, your race comes almost to a standstill. Or you find out that really from the 16 kilometer mark to the 21 kilometer mark, it's a huge struggle for you. You've slowed down considerably. Once blood lactate enters into your bloodstream, it's very difficult to take it off. You have to slow down very substantially. So you have to be careful about the half marathon too. You can't really, although you have an unlimited supply of glycogen, okay, you don't need it. The problem is that blood lactate can enter into your bloodstream. So be careful about even going out too fast in a half marathon. So we were talking about the course. You have the C-link, which is an incline, so be careful about how you pace yourself on this incline. Your heart rate will go up. And as I said, in the first 5 kilometers, you want to make sure that you feel as if you're getting warmed up. At the 10-kilometer mark, you are warmed up and moving at cruising speed. The most important part is that you be careful about the pedal road hill here, because your pace is going to drop substantially. At this point of time, blood lactate has entered your bloodstream and you are quite fatigued, so your pace is going to drop substantially and your times are going to be slower. Okay? So this is for the half marathon. Okay. In the full marathon, what's important is 4 parts to the race. In the first 10 kilometers, you should feel that you are going to break into a sweat. Make sure that you monitor your rating of perceived exertion to feel fresh enough that in the first 10 kilometers, I'm going to break into a sweat. At the end of the first half, which is 21 kilometers, you should have felt, I am now at cruising speed. I am now fresh enough. I don't feel I've run a half marathon. That's the thought that should come into your mind. Oh, it's just a half marathon and I'm still feeling good. That's what you should look out for in the full marathon. Okay? Now, at that halfway mark, since you're feeling so fresh, you get this temptation that I can now increase my pace. Actually, it's not going to happen, because from the 21 kilometer mark to the 32 kilometer mark, which is really when you get depleted of your glycogen, you're going to face a problem. So make sure that you don't increase your pace too much. You can. Your body will tell you how much based on how fresh you feel. And of course, from 32 to 42, it's a long march for you. Your body will tell you whether you can really increase your pace or whether you're going to slow down. So what we do in all of this is use your training data in terms of what your long runs were. How did they feel? You know, when you ran your 32 kilometers, how did you feel on a rating of 1 to 10? Whether you felt hammered, it was 8. If it was you were just about okay, it was 5 or 6. So use that data to find out what should have been your pace or what can be your pace. Okay? There are predictors to the full marathon. Okay? It's 2.11 into your half marathon time. But seldom can you hit that time unless you have really put in a lot of training, you've put in enough mileage, you've done enough long runs of 32, 33, 34 kilometers, and a lot of those long runs should have been done at the goal or predicted marathon pace. So if you can do that, then you can get a good fix on what your race plan should be. And you must make a race plan for yourself. It's very simple. You make an Excel sheet in which you put the pace, you put the kilometer markers here, and you will get the time. The same thing is for a half marathon. I have deliberately used a slow marathon runner who's been training with me and expected to finish in 6 hours. So here what you do is you put your pace, because this pace you can predict either from your long runs or from your most recent half marathon time. If you've run a half marathon, let's say in December, a lot of people have run the Goa half marathon. If you've run the half marathon in December, or you've run the Airtel Delhi half marathon, it's a very good predictor for you as to what can be your potential finish time for the full marathon. But combine that with the long runs that you've been doing. Okay? Make sure that you've done enough long runs of 32, 33 or 37 kilometers to sustain that or use that basis for yourself. So I would put the pace here and find for myself, as I said, I'm just about warming up at 20 kilometers mark, so my pace is very constant. Okay? From 20 to 25, what I've done is I've added 10 seconds per kilometer for this runner, because I found that in the long runs there was a problem. So the runner is likely to slow down just a tad by 10 seconds. If you do that, the pace comes to 8:20. I sustain this pace of 8:20, then I come to the pedal road hill. Now at the pedal road hill, there is a general guideline. If the incline is between 3% and 4%, you're likely to lose 45 seconds to 1 minute per kilometer. Okay? So I've slowed this runner down by 1 minute per kilometer at the 35 kilometer mark at Pedder Road Hill. So the pace suddenly goes from 8:20 to 9:20. The runner slows down terribly. Okay? So I've used that. Once you hit the downhill after the Pedder Road, I know that the person is not going to recover fully to the 820 pace that he had or she had beforehand, you will go down to 850. Using this, I know that at close to between 40 and 42 kilometers, the person is going to be really hammered and is likely to slow down further to a pace of 920. I get a finish time of 554. Now this can be a very good predictor for yourself if you can put it down and find out for yourself, tinker around with it and find out for yourself what can be your potential finish time, and use this in your run to find out whether you're hitting those points at the 34-kilometer mark or 30-kilometer mark at the right time. Okay? So a race plan helps you with this. The same thing has been done for a half marathon. As I said, you should feel up to 10 kilometers, you're just about warming up, which means that the pace is appropriate. At 16 kilometers, we know that you're likely to slow down by 10 seconds. At the 17-kilometer mark, you will hit the pedal road hill. So again, I slow down the runner by a whole minute. Okay? The recovery from 750 is not back to 650, but 705, and therefore you finish the half marathon in 224. So you can, it's a very simple Excel sheet. What you can do is use this as a predictor for how you would be racing tomorrow. Use this Excel sheet. It hardly takes you about 10-15 minutes to put it on your laptop tonight and find out for yourself how much you would really slow down in the second half of the race in the full marathon by making sure that you allow for your pace to drop. Okay? So, after all this scientific analysis, what is more important is heed this. Okay? Do the work, do the analysis, but feel your run, feel your race, feel the joy that is running. That's more important at the end of the day. Yeah? Thank you. If you are not warming up in the enclosure, which a lot of full marathoners don't end up doing because they know that the race is long, you use the first 2 kilometers to get into the groove, as we call it. Okay? Get into your stride. You will find that there is some lethargy in your legs, and it will come out of it in the first 2 to 3 kilometers. So your pace can be slightly slow, but it will pick up the moment your body is warmed up. The moment your lungs open up, you will know that you're running at a comfortable pace. The predictor, as I said, is 2.11 multiplied by your half marathon time. So if your half marathon time is, let's say, 2 hours, so that's 120 multiplied by 2.11. It's 11% more. So that's around, say, 13 minutes more. Okay? After you double it. So 4 hours and 14 minutes. This is a good predictor. Okay? But you need to do all the hard work before that. You will finish in 4 hours, 15 minutes if you've run at least 4 to 5 long runs of 32 kilometers or more. Okay, that's what you need, 4 to 5 long runs of 32 kilometers or more. In these 32 kilometers, you should have felt a rating of perceived exertion, which is about 6. If you finished most of these feeling hammered and rating of perceived exertion is 8, you know that somewhere you're not going to be able to sustain 32 to 42, right? What you do in training, you can't do magic in the race. So you know that 4:15 or 4:13 could possibly go to 4:25.
For a half marathon, if I just divide it into two, first 10 kilometers, first 10 and a half and the latter 10 and a half, where should I be faster between the two?
You will, the thing is like this, you allow your body to decide when you can be faster, okay? You cannot, as I said, if you have a predetermined pace in mind and you force it on yourself, you will have blood lactate entering your bloodstream and your race will go south, okay? So use the first 10 kilometers to find out if you are fresh at the 10-kilometer mark. If using that pace, whatever you did, okay, let's say you finished 10 kilometers in 1 hour, right? You know that 6 minutes per kilometer is your pace. If you felt fresh at the 10 kilometer mark, you know that now you're in a position to take off, so to say. So 6 minutes per kilometer can become 550. I wouldn't advise you to increase faster than 10 seconds per kilometer.
Sir, your hands get cold. What do you do about that? Because the blood flow is more on the feet and the leg.
Why do you want to do anything about it? Your hands get cold, the race is more important. Okay, you probably have to rub your hands together, or if you really feel that they are the type that are giving you discomfort, maybe wearing gloves, light gloves can help you. But I'd say ignore things which are not going to disturb your race otherwise. Thank you.